This is the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. Today, we have Mike Reilly, Mike Ferrante, and Lindsey Reilly having a very socially distanced podcast. Excuse the audio as we recorded both mics on a conference call. The group discusses effects of the coronavirus on the rental market, effects on the buying and selling market, and general thoughts on what's to come as far as social and economic developments going forward. Stay tuned.
Hi, everybody. This is Mike Reilly from the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. And if I sound a little different, it's because I'm calling in from my home office, which is in my living room. I also have Mike Ferrante here from his den/living room. Hi, Mike.
Hey, great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Okay. And we've got Lindsey Reilly, who is maintaining her social distance from our engineer, Amari. How are you, Lindsey?
Good. Here in the flesh at the Reilly Painting and Contracting headquarters in Cleveland Heights.
Okay, good. Well, obviously a special new addition to our podcast and a lot to talk about. I just want to lead off with this sort of a general theme that I've been talking with a lot of clients, our company, and friends and family, which is, I think, what we're going through very similar to what happened in December 7th, 1941. I do not think this is a 9/11 or a financial crash of 2008. I think this is far worse and more impactful going forward. When you think about what happened in December 7th, 1941 from your history books, what happened after December 7th was a total radical shift in the country. We turned from an isolationist-oriented country to an interventionist country. The isolationist movement had been going on for a couple of years as World War II was raging in Europe, and the U.S. was kept out of the fight by a huge isolationist movement. After December 7th, that isolation movement went the way of the dinosaurs. It was almost like a meteor hitting. I think what we're going to see coming out of this is a radical shift in how we look at science. I think we've been skipping along for decades, marginalizing science, marginalizing the experts, and there's been a lot of conventional wisdom flying around. I also think that it's going to shift more and more to telecommuting, and especially how it impacts real estate. There's always going to be need for boots in the ground, but you're going to see more and more people shifting towards working through the internet. I've gotten on my soapbox. I had to get that off my chest. But Mike, your general thoughts before we get into specifics.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you just said. I think that the people in the real estate industry who are ahead of the curve, like our team, we're not really being affected too much by all this because we already use all that kind of technology. We're already shooting videos. We're already having Zoom meetings for our staff meetings. Our team is pretty spread out, so we're not getting together in person for meetings anyway. I think where the change is going to happen, though, is buyers and sellers are going to be, especially in the short term, whether it's weeks or months, they're going to be less comfortable going in and out of people's homes, and sellers are going to be less comfortable having a bunch of strangers in and out of their homes. So that's what's going to be interesting to see in the short term.
Lindsey, your thoughts?
Yeah, so...
As a millennial?
Sure. As a millennial, I would say that this is, it's a little scary because it is throwing... And I'm speaking as myself, but perhaps for others, it just throws off your routine, what you're used to, what you're used to doing each day. I would say, especially from an interaction standpoint, with being able to see friends and whatnot. But from a business standpoint, we've actually seen quite an uptick in the inquiries from people who are looking to get out of a city or cities that are in shutdown and lockdown mode. I will go into that more later through this podcast. I prepared a couple of stories for our listeners out there. But that's been over these last, and again, it's only Wednesday, so I'm kind of in the thick of things where I'm, this has been kind of this really started hitting off on Monday, with schools closing, gyms closing. I mean, a lot of just things closing in general. So I would say, as from what I've seen over these last 48 hours, I've seen an uptick in people who need to get in somewhere right away, and people who are willing to book a rental sight unseen. And it's been a positive response that we've been seeing so far, and I'll just kind of leave it at that, at least for now.
Right. Well, you know what? We've had 2 inquiries, one already booked from New York City, and we had another inquiry today from somebody who lives on Central Park West. He used to live in Shaker Heights, and he's not interested in going to shelter in place. He's already thinking about, maybe I should just come back to Cleveland and rent a place. I've been following a lot of the CNBC and the online magazines, New York Times, Washington Post, New York Magazine, and we're going through everybody's processing this in a different way. Should we hunker down as a country, like Italy, Singapore, or should we adapt to what is about to happen in the next couple of months? I just got done reading a story, which I highly recommend people read, on New York Magazine, which was that the reaction to the virus is way too pessimistic. We have to be clear-eyed that we are going into a major change over the next 3 to 6 to 8 months. But on the other hand, the prospect of shutting down cities for months is just not practical. And some of the cities in Italy, some of the smaller cities in Italy especially, have been adopting a whole different approach. Singapore is going through a different approach. So we're going to be seeing in real time what's happening to these other cities and how it can impact on Cleveland. Now, I'm not trying to pass myself off as a medical expert. I read a lot. I'm obviously very opinionated. But I think what we're seeing in the what Mike was alluding to with the real estate, you're going to have more and more people who are going to be buying online, seeing properties online. You're going to see people who might want to rent on a short-term basis because they're not sure how deep this recession is going to be over the next 6 to 8 months, what the impact on property values are going to be. Mike, you had a very interesting point this morning when we were talking about how this is going to be restricting the amount of houses that are for sale. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, exactly. So we're already in a nationwide inventory shortage of homes. That's the main factor that's driving prices up. So what we're probably going to see here in the short term are sellers who are going to hesitate to put their home on the market, and that's going to further aggravate the problem of inventory that we have. Buyers are still buying. We just this past weekend, we put 3 more houses under contract, and, I was running the numbers today in preparation for this call, and there's still lots of activity happening. Now, what's going to be interesting is to see what the March numbers do, but for February, it's still very active. In the last couple of weeks, very, very active. But the number of listings on the market went down from last month to this month, and that's not typical. Usually as spring approaches, the inventory rises, and that's kind of what buyers have been banking on. They're saying, well, we can't find anything now, but in the next few months, everyone's going to be putting their houses on the market. I think what you're going to have are a lot of sellers, I don't know how many, but a lot of sellers who say, well, let's just wait and see what happens. And I'm not sure if that's the best strategy. If I had my crystal ball work and it's in the shop right now, I'd be able to tell you definitively wait or don't wait. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
I also think, turning to Lindsey on the short-term side, you're more, obviously, Mike, with the real estate sector, you're more long-term, people buying houses. Lindsey's, dealing with the short-term and also just the rental market in general. And Lindsey, you and I have been talking about what is the impact on this virus. And one thing that I'm thinking, just as an economic theory, is that you're going to have people that are going to are coming into Cleveland for different, the clinic is here, University Hospital is here. So, I mean, they're on the cutting edge of a lot of developments of vaccines or even medicine to deal with the virus. There's a lot of money pouring into development of that, and you got to wonder where the Cleveland Clinic is. But my point is that people coming in, they may not want to stay at a hotel where there's a lot of people.
Right.
They're gonna want to stay, do some social distancing at a furnished rental, at a house. And I think that is what we've been seeing just in the last couple of days with these inquiries from New York. I mean, they could always stay at a hotel, but stay at the house. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I just need to jump in on that, because just even as an outsider, if I was living in New York and there's a shelter, being in place, and there's a lockdown potentially happening, the last place that I would want to go to is a hotel. I would not want to be surrounded by other people. I mean, I'd want to be in a place where, in our case, where no one else has inhabited it, and it's a place that, hasn't been surrounded by 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people. And that goes the same for motels. But I wanted to actually mention something. Mike Reilly, in the beginning of this podcast, he had discussed briefly just a couple who came in from New York. I wanted to actually just mention this particular story because I think this is important for our listeners out there to understand these kinds of people who are inquiring about these properties and who are booking them. This was the first Airbnb booking that we've gotten in the last 3 to 4 years where someone has specifically asked us to not go into the property before they booked the place. In fact, they had reached out to me saying, we're coming in from New York. We're going to start driving at around 9 o'clock. We're expected to get into Cleveland around 7 a.m. When was the last time you had a family in this house? And I said to them, well, it's been a couple of weeks. And they said, great, how do we book? They didn't want people in there. They wanted to be in a place that had actually been vacant for quite some time. And furthermore, they had also asked us to not do a cleaning. They wanted it to be a place that hadn't been touched in the last few weeks. So this is going to be something, in fact, this is already a piece of marketing verbiage that I've been using in our ads. I mean, even up until this podcast, I was working on our Airbnb listings and tweaking our Craigslist ads to reflect what the market is telling us.
Now, some people are probably thinking they're listening to this that there's a kind of war of the worlds factor to this where, New York's under attack. I mean, it is under attack. I mean, the big cities are, where they're densely populated are under attack by this virus. So there is a little bit of fleeing. I mean, a lot of these people are going out they're going to hunker down in the Hamptons. And it's not like they can't find something outside of the tri-state area or New York that they couldn't go to. But I think I'd be curious is these people who came from New York, I gotta feel that people are coming to Cleveland because they have family.
Exactly. That's exactly
and
right.
They know Cleveland. I mean, they're not coming here because this is an area which is virus free. So, I mean, we're going to be testing out a Craigslist ad today. We're going to be putting it in the New York City area, which is going to say, hey, do you have friends and family in Cleveland? Do you want to rent a place here? And, see what the response is. I don't think we're going to get deluged with the people calling but again, this market and this economy is changing, is shifting before our eyes. And I think people, when you start seeing this siege go on for the next 45 days, people are going to get stir crazy. They can't go out. I mean, this is going to have some serious ramifications on our economy. So do you want to be staying in, a densely populated city, or do you want to stay in a more of a suburb where you can walk around the neighborhood?
Right.
So, Mike, you want to jump in here with your thoughts?
That's your arena with the short-term rentals, but everything you're saying makes total sense. Lindsey, I'm with you. If I had to go somewhere, the last place I would go would be a hotel. I would want to get into a house where I could have my own space. I don't want the cleaning lady coming in every day. I don't want the maintenance staff coming around. I don't want 20, 50, 100 employees and other guests touching my food and wandering around. So I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, that's something we need to pay attention to. Mike, you want to, I don't want this to get too long here, but getting back to what you're on the real estate side, we're having people who are putting their house on the market. And I had fielded 2 calls today from longtime customers who are, they're downsizing, they're putting their house on the market. And I said, should you sell your house and then rent for like 3 or 4 months and see how this shakes out? What's your thoughts on that?
It's funny you mention that, because I think that now is probably the best time to sell your house. Not now, meaning coronavirus time, but now in general in the market. And I even said that to my wife. I said, we should consider selling our current residence, putting that money away, and renting something not just for a couple months, but maybe for a year. Because I think that at some point here, and this could be the trigger, but we're going to head into a recession. Now, I don't see prices plummeting, but what I do see is activity slowing down. And that was kind of what we talked about with the whole inventory shortage. So I think right now we're going to see a short-term dip in an already low inventory. I think prices are going to stay the same. And this isn't just me thinking that. That's what all the experts are saying. That's what, Lawrence Yun, the economist, the chief economist for the NAR, is saying. Guys like him are saying that, yes, maybe my estimate of 5.5 million sales this year up from last year is going to be wrong because of this, but the market's going to stay pretty robust. Should you sell and then rent for a little while? Maybe, but we're going to have to definitely make some adjustments in the time during the coronavirus outbreak and how we do things. So today, you guys are working on a house, and that's going to be hitting the market soon. And one of my first questions was, are these folks going to move out when they put their house on the market? So normally you wouldn't move out of your house unless you already had purchased a house, but it's going to be perfect for them. They're going to have a vacant house. Buyers are going to be happy to go in there because no one's living there, and the sellers will be content because they're already moved out where they're going. Not every seller can do that, but I think they're going to be the beneficiaries of this perfect storm of inventory shortage and buyers still needing to buy a house during this time.
Yeah, I remember in the crash of 08, 09, we were fortunate because we were in a good situation. We didn't have any debt. We were not into building houses. We were not into building developments. We were basically, our bread and butter was repairs, roof repairs. We did now and then we did a couple of big jobs, remodeling jobs, very few additions, but it was a lot of gutter cleaning, plumbing, electrical repairs. So actually our best year was in 09. And there's always winners and losers, unfortunately, in any kind of economic shift. 09 was bankruptcy lawyers, just a banner year. Think about that scene in, Lindsey, that movie, Up in the Air. They're jumping up in the air like, Big Auto just laid off 40,000. I mean, they're just high-fiving, things. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing the carnage in the auto industry. It's in the airline industry. I mean, they're just getting pummeled with nobody's traveling on the airlines, and the hotel industry is just being crushed. And I think coming out of this, you're going to see less and less people are going to get more comfortable about telecommuting. And so you're going to see, I think you're going to see a major downside in hotels because people don't need to go to a conference and fly to a hotel.
Right.
They don't need to go. They don't need to fly. The road warriors going around face to face. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Lindsey? We're just starting to do Zoom now.
Yeah. I mean, even now, like, I'm thinking to myself, well, should I just stay home and just work? And then there's a part of me that's like, no, I enjoy getting out. I enjoy coming into an office and being able to interact with people. Obviously, that's a little down now because there aren't a lot of people here in our office. It's incredibly quiet right now. But, this is where the beauty of being in a job that allows me to work from home. And this has been set up even for a couple of years now. I've been on trips to Colorado, or I've been traveling on business and stuff, and I've still been able to work from home or work remotely. And many of my friends are in jobs like that. I think it's pretty rare for me to meet someone who is my age, who isn't already doing that. So I would agree with you. Well, first of all, Mike Ferrante, I think it's awesome that you're still able, that you guys are seeing a nice boost in your sales. And I'm frankly not surprised to see that, that you guys are already set up for people to just, head on into a home and take a look at it. I mean, I know from a rental side, we've got that keyless entry where people can just punch in the code, go right into a house, and they're all set to go. So I think, if I kind of step back and take a look at what's going on from an impact, I think there's going to be some incredible shifts with how people essentially are approaching how they want to be running their business. Because guess what, people? This is going to happen again. This kind of outbreak, hopefully not to this magnitude, but this is going to happen again where we may have to go into shutdown mode. So it's better that we're being prepared for that. And I agree with, I'm not sure if it was Mike Reilly or Mike Ferrante who said this, but, not being in complaining mode right now. It's more of, okay, well, how are you going to adapt to this? What are the changes that you're going to be making, not just from a business standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint? So I think there's going to be, I'm trying to see some positive outcomes from this. That's kind of where my head is these days, these last couple of days.
I don't think we're going to have, 911 is a good example. People thought that we were going, when they introduced the TSA, they thought we were going to have these hijackings and flying into buildings, all the time and blowing up planes and of course, once TSA was established, it just didn't happen. I'm not saying it won't happen again, but you've got to think about the coronavirus. I mean, they have been wargaming this for a decade. This is something. These pandemics, these superbugs. They've been talking about this for a long time, and so it was bound to happen. So this is like I said, the front end of this podcast, this is a huge wake-up call in terms of science and make sure, and I hate to say this to my Republican friends, but you know what, you just cannot afford to have somebody unequipped to be president of the United States. I mean, it used to be 50, 60 years ago when we elected a president, they had to have the temperament that they had finger on the nuclear button. I think we cannot afford not to have somebody who has a certain level of competency as a president. And this is going to be a wake-up call on science and on government. I'm sorry if I had to steer off it, but it's the wake-up call on a number of levels. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to do is we're going to return back to a healthy center-right and a healthy center-left Democrat and Republican Party that we had, in the 50s and in 60s, in the 70s. Science is going to play a role, but I have to add one more thing. I know I'm going off on tangents, but I have to mention how telecommuting is like email and it's like the internet. I remember a good friend of mine was in public relations and just hated making phone calls. Once that person started doing emails to the media, it was a breeze. Once emails got to be a habit, people embraced it, and now that's all they do. And I think you're going to see that with telecommuting. Once they try it and like it, you don't go backwards from that.
Right.
Right.
Mike, final thoughts? I know you're using Zoom and other stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Your term "wake-up call" is exactly what I think should be the main message here today. When you think about the change in consumer buying habits, and I'm talking about the Amazon effect. People don't go to the store as much anymore. You think about how people watch movies. Ask Blockbuster if they wished they had read the tea leaves a little better. So I think that what you're saying is 100% true. And if people aren't embracing the changes that are going to come from this, i.e. telecommuting, Zoom meetings, conference calls, go-to meetings, those types of different ways of doing business, they're going to go the way of Blockbuster. You have to accept it and embrace it instead of saying, oh, well, I'm just not going to do it that way. This will all blow over. No, there's going to be changes in the way business is done, not just real estate.
Right.
Well,
right.
And I think, let me just jump in here. I think what it's going to do is it's going to accelerate the demise of certain industries. For example, with, you can kiss those malls goodbye. This is the final hammer blow to malls. Nobody is going to a mall anymore, given the virus, and that was already declining. So, go ahead, Lindsey.
If I can just speak to some of our investors out there and some of our other listeners out there who, are workout fiends like me and who really thrive in areas where we're going into gyms and we're working out with our friends. I have seen a huge uptick in the number of ads that I've been seeing from these at-home workout places. So when I talk
Peloton.
Peloton, Beachbody, I mean, you name it. If you talk about some sort of positive that's going to come out of this, there are going to be a lot of businesses like these at-home workouts that are just going to see a really nice surge because people are getting a taste for what that's like to not have to pay all these fees to go into somewhere to do what they love when they can just do it from home. So this coronavirus is exposing businesses that may not have seen a huge membership or a huge revenue standpoint. They may not be seeing that before this, but now they are. I mean, you look at things like DoorDash, Uber Eats, the Beachbody, the at-home workouts. I mean, these kinds of businesses where you are seeing stuff online or it's just a click of the phone and you've already got it, that's where those kinds of businesses like Airbnbs included, that's where they're going to thrive.
Right, and you're doing this all from your home, and this is where, Mike, from your realty business, people are buying from their armchairs now. And as we start adding, as Lindsey, you start adding, and I know, Mike, you're starting to do this more and more, you've got Zillow rolling out the whole 3D, literally, it's a virtual tour of the house. Lindsey, you want to jump on that for a minute, and we'll have Mike follow up?
Yeah, well, that's actually something that we are starting to explore more, is this 3D software where we can go in and just like Mike Ferrante will probably talk more about, is allowing people not just to see the photos of the home, but to pretend as if they are walking through the home and they're setting their bags down and they're going to be staying for the next couple of months. That's the direction that we're taking. That's what I can say about that at this particular point.
Yeah, and we're already doing it. We've been doing live video tours of houses for about 7 years now, where we physically walk through the house and people can get a feel for what it would be like to walk through, as though you were walking through with me. We narrate those and explain kind of what you're looking at. It's a lot better than the photos because you get a feeling for how the rooms connect and what the flow is and so forth. Lindsey, what you're talking about, those 3D tours, I'm going to say a brand name here, and that's Matterport.
I've heard of them. Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a Matterport camera, and it's what you're talking about, where you can click your way through the house, you can grab it with your mouse and look up and look down. You can basically see the whole house as though you're walking through it. And I think what's going to happen is that people are, instead of saying, well, Mike, I want to go walk through 20 houses or 10 houses, they're going to say, yeah, we already previewed those. We've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 that we actually want to go to.
Right.
Well, I think it's important, though. It's all well and good to have the 3D this and the virtual tour of that, but the end user has to be comfortable with that. It's like we had a web page, and we were online in the late 90s. I remember back in the day when Yahoo was the porthole to use. Then all of a sudden, I'm in Canada's Wonderland with my nephew and niece, and, Lindsay's like 10 years old, and we're sitting there. I'm reading the New Yorker, and I'm reading about this little company called Google. And so I went back home, and I started using Google instead of Yahoo. But then we started getting a web page. But nobody was going to the web page then. Now, with the virus, what's going to happen is people don't have a choice, and they're going to start doing it, and they're going to start liking it.
Right.
And so having that platform already developed, like what you have, Mike, what we're developing here, is going to start meeting people that are now more receptive to that. You know what? I want to end on this note. Besides, remind everybody to maintain their distance and wash their hands. But I'm watching the market. I'm just watching these sectors just get creamed. Other sectors are holding their own. Walmart's one of the few stocks that went up today. You're going to start seeing signs of what industries are going to be, are holding their own in this storm. But with interest rates going to zero, if not negative, which I wouldn't be surprised if they went negative, the short-term rentals, the rental market is going to be a good investment in the long term, given the choices that you have, a volatile stock market or a treasury bill. If you can manage the rentals the right way with a disciplined model of what to buy and who to rent to, etc., I think over the next couple of years, this is where you want to have a good chunk of your money. Final thoughts, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, where do people go when the stock market crashes, where other investments crash? Other than 2008, real estate has been that safe haven for investors. And I think what you say about specifically short-term rentals, I think if you're not diversifying at least some of your portfolio into short-term rentals, you're missing a huge opportunity.
Right. Thoughts, Lindsey, from a millennial?
I would say that if you are in an area right now where either you're thinking of going home and staying closer to family and you've got an empty, vacant property, or perhaps you're thinking about buying real estate, I think that this direction that we're heading in right now with riding the coronavirus wave, I think that there is an opportunity to see some nice growth and to not let that vacant property just sit there while you pay that mortgage. I think for people like myself who maybe they are renting right now and they want to get out and go closer home to mom, but they still need to pay that rent bill. I think that there's an opportunity there. I think there's an opportunity to rent out to people who want to be closer to their family. At least that's my take as a millennial.
Good. Well, I'm going to add I'm going to add one more final thought, and which is that, about a month ago, I made a decision to get out of the market and just go to cash when I saw what was happening in China and how it was morphing over to Italy. And it didn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that this tsunami is headed west, and it's going to hit the U.S. Sooner rather than later. And unfortunately, my assumptions were correct. It did hit, and it's just been wreaking havoc. I think that what has been infuriating to me is listening on CNBC about people talking about, stay the course, long-term investors have to have a 5-year, look, etc. And I think that is, excuse English, bullshit. Because I know there's a lot of sharp investors who exited the market. They saw the writing on the wall. They got out of the market, and they went to cash, waiting to hunker down and then waiting to get back in. And I think it's just criminal about how advice has been passed out on CNBC and other financial things that are telling the average person who's looking at their 401k just plummet in value. Why didn't my investment guy or person call me and tell me to get out now? The tsunami's coming. We're seeing it. Get to the high ground, and then rethink how you want to get back in. So from a real estate investor, I am not trying to push people saying this is the pot of gold. I'm saying this is a safe harbor.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you don't, stay in cash. Stay in cash, because this is going to be a massive roller coaster that we're going to be on for the next probably year and a half.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I will let Amari edit this, and we're going to pick this up round 2 sometime next week. So thanks, Mike. Get the microwave going. And Lindsey, thanks again. And Amari, keep the mask on.
Yep.
And we'll talk to everybody later.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast. Stay socially distanced, safe, healthy, sanitize heavily, and find previous or future episodes of our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, or our website, www.riley-properties.com.